Welcome to Rajya Sabha television. Here's a quick news update. Evacuation of people living within 10 kilometers of border in Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir begins. BSF on high alert. This after Indian Army strikes 7 terror launch pads across LOC. All parties back government and congratulate Army on successful operation. India briefs top envoys of 25 countries on action. UN, US, China ask both nations to exercise restraint. Kaveri water dispute case comes up in Supreme Court today. Centre's attempts to find political solution fails on Thursday after meeting with leaders of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu remains inconclusive. US and Russia talks over Syria in real danger of breakdown. Russia refuses to stop bombing of Aleppo despite US demands. And India to take on New Zealand in the second test of the series at the Eden Gardens in Kolkata today. India look to reclaim #1 ICC test ranking after bagging the first test. Let's begin with our top focus on the breakfast news this morning, marking a paradigm shift in its approach to cross-border terrorism originating from Pakistan. India on Thursday carried out a surgical army strike along the line of control in Pakistan. While army officials disclosed that heavy casualties and damage have been inflicted on the terrorists and their armaments, Pakistan has denied the claim, even as it admitted that 2 of its soldiers had died in what they called cross-border firing.
A little after midnight on Thursday, India took an unprecedented step to signal a historic shift in its strategic response to terror attacks emanating from Pakistani soil. From 12:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m., ground and helicopter-borne Indian forces entered Pakistani-occupied Kashmir after crossing the line of control to hit 7 terrorist launch pads.
Now, based on very specific and credible information which we received yesterday, that some terrorist teams had positioned themselves at launch pads along the line of control with an aim to carry out infiltration and terrorist strikes in Jammu and Kashmir and various other metros in our country. The Indian Army conducted surgical strikes last night at these launch pads.
The army said the strikes severely damaged the targets and inflicted significant terrorist casualties. Some Pakistani soldiers who were trying to help the terrorists were also reported killed.
During these counter-terrorist operations, significant casualties have been caused to the terrorists and those who are trying to support them. The operations aimed at neutralizing the terrorists have since ceased. I have just spoken to the Pakistani Director General of Military Operations and explained our concerns and also shared with him the operations we had conducted last night.
The strikes come in the wake of the September 18th terror attack on the Indian armed forces in Uri sector of Jammu and Kashmir that killed 18 Indian soldiers and left some injured. The incident triggered huge public pressure on the government to respond in equal measure.
It is India's intention to maintain peace and tranquility in the region. But we can certainly not allow the terrorists to operate across the line of control with impunity and attack the citizens of our country.
Before going on the offensive, India made persistent requests to Pakistan's authorities to persuade it to stop the terrorist infiltration. Pakistani High Commissioner Abdul Basit was also summoned and given proof of involvement of Pakistan-based terrorist groups in the attack. 20 infiltration bids were foiled in the meantime, even as Pakistan maintained its traditional insensitivity to the problem. India is now telling Pakistan that its surgical strike had a specific objective to intimidate the terrorists. But if Pakistan tries to retaliate, it is ready for a rebuttal.
We do not have any plans for further continuation of the operations. However, the Indian armed forces are fully prepared for any contingency that may arise.
After the operation, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviewed the situation at a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security. Heads of Army, Navy and Air Force along with Home Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar were present at the meeting. The armed forces have been told to remain vigilant and ready for any misadventure or retaliatory action by Pakistan.
Surgical strike against the terrorist camp in Pakistan was in the air for a long time. Now Government of India has done it. It is a clear message to Pakistan whether it wants cooperation or confrontation on the issue of terrorism. Akhilesh Suman with Vishal Dahiya and camera person Manoj Kumar in Delhi.
Well, leaders of all major political parties were briefed by the Home Minister Rajnath Singh on the situation in the wake of the Indian Army's surgical strike targeting terror launch pads across the line of control. All parties backed the move, also congratulating the army.
Hours after announcing the army's surgical strike targeting terror launch pads across the line of control, the NDA government convened a meeting of leaders of major political parties to brief them about the situation.
और सबने आर्मी को हार्दिक बधाई दिया और सबने कहा ये पाकिस्तान को मालूम हो गया, इसको हम लोग आगे ऐसी घटनाओं को बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे.
Cutting across political lines, leaders congratulated the Indian Army and reiterated their support for the government.
पाकिस्तान की तरफ से हमारे देश पे थोपा जा रहा है, उस टेररिज्म को खत्म करने के लिए जो भी कदम सरकार उठाएगी, हमारा उसका समर्थन हमेशा रहेगा. हमारी फौज को मकसद हमारा है कि टेररिज्म खत्म हो जाए.
हम लोगों ने सरकार को पूरी तरह से आश्वस्त किया कि हम सब लोग साथ हैं और फौज ने बहुत सक्सेसफुल तरीके से इस ऑपरेशन को जो अंजाम दिया, इसके लिए फौज को हम लोगों ने बधाई दी और सरकार को कहा कि हम सब लोग एक साथ खड़े हैं.
I said I have congratulated the Indian Army for these operations. Good, that is good. But what exactly is the overall assessment? They said it will take a little time to make that assessment.
Earlier in the day, Prime Minister briefed the President, the Vice President and former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh about the surgical strikes by the Indian Army. On his part, the Home Minister informed Chief Ministers of West Bengal, Odisha, Punjab, Bihar and other states about the strikes. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj met Congress President Sonia Gandhi and briefed her on the issue. India also briefed top envoys of 25 countries including the US, China, Russia, the UK and France over the strikes. Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar briefed the envoys in South Block to convey the context of carrying out the strikes. Vishal Dahiya's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, evacuations have begun from border areas following India's surgical strikes on terror launch pads across the line of control. Pakistan, that initially denied the strikes, summoned the Indian envoy over what they claimed was unprovoked firing by Indian forces. Pakistan also claimed 8 Indian soldiers were killed. India has rejected that claim. Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has convened a cabinet meeting today to discuss the Kashmir issue.
People living within 10 kilometers of the border with Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab asked to shift to safer places. Schools have been ordered to shut until further notice.
We have provided for food, electricity generators. Wherever there is a cluster of evacuee population, we have provided for a doctor, ambulance, as well as we have provided for sufficient police security to guard the evacuated villages.
High alert has been sounded in Gujarat. Fishermen have been instructed not to venture beyond 15 to 20 nautical miles into the sea. Rajasthan too is on high alert. 4 districts, Bikaner, Jaisalmer, Badmer and Sri Ganganagar, share over 1,000 km long border with Pakistan. Maharashtra government has directed the state police to stay alert and take required measures. The BSF has put its units along the Indo-Pak border on high alert. Personnel on the eastern frontier too have been alerted. Families of soldiers who were killed in the Uri attack have welcomed India's strike.
सेना ने बहुत उचित काम किया है और ये हमारा लड़के का बलिदान या अभी हाल में जो बलिदान सेना का लोगों का हुआ है या बीएसएफ का हुआ हो उसका बदला अच्छी तरह से लिया गया है.
Pakistan initially rejected the surgical strikes as baseless, but later summoned the Indian High Commissioner over what they claim was unprovoked firing by Indian forces. Islamabad admitting 2 of its soldiers were killed.
हिंदुस्तान की तरफ से स्मॉल वेपन फायर हुआ 5 सेक्टर्स में, जिसमें लीपा भी था, बिम्बर भी था और 3 और लोकेशंस के ऊपर लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल पे उन्होंने फायरिंग की, जिसके नतीजे में हमारे 2 फौजी शहीद हुए हैं और 9 फौजी जो हैं वो ज़ख्मी हुए हैं.
The Pakistan Foreign Office stating that the unprovoked firing is a continuation of a pattern of ceasefire violations by India. Pakistan continuing to claim that India has not shared with it any evidence on its involvement in the Uri attack, in which 18 soldiers were killed. India's surgical strikes were in retaliation to that attack.
So we are waiting for the details to come from our High Commission. So once we have those details with us, we'll definitely look into it as to what details or what information have been provided, because it was just a piece of paper which has been given to him.
Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif reviewed defense preparedness following the surgical strikes. He held talks with the army chief Rahil Sharif and other top aides. Sharif continuing with his rhetoric that Kashmir is an unfinished agenda of partition and that no power can deter them from supporting the cause. Sharif has also called a cabinet meeting today to discuss the present Kashmir situation. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's now take a look at how world leaders have been reacting to India's surgical strikes across the line of control. The United Nations has asked India and Pakistan to exercise restraint and encourage them to continue their effort to resolve their differences peacefully and through dialogue. The UN saying it is following the situation with great concern. The United States has urged calm and restraint on both sides. Washington also saying it understands that the Indian and Pakistani militaries have been in communication and that continued communication is important to reduce tensions. Closer home, China is saying it is in touch with India and Pakistan through different channels to bring down tensions. Beijing asking the two countries to properly deal with their differences and work jointly to maintain peace and security in the region. Meanwhile, on the second leg of his visit to West Africa, Vice President Hamid Ansari arrived in Mali on Thursday after his successful visit to Nigeria. During his visit, Vice President will meet Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, the Vice President, and would also address the National Assembly of the Republic of Mali. The Vice President will be meeting Prime Minister Modibo Keita, which will be followed by delegation-level talks during which several agreements will be signed between both sides. Vice President Ansari will meet CEOs of Indian origin and Indian companies and would also interact with the Indians posted in Mali under the United Nations missions later in the day. So far, 2 agreements between India and Mali were signed, one on standards by Minister of State Arjun Ram Meghwal and another on cultural exchange cooperation by the Indian ambassador in Mali.
Productive afternoon opened a new chapter in the bilateral relationship between Mali and India.
Well, before departure from Nigeria, Vice President delivered a lecture on the legacy of India's national movement at the University of Lagos by invoking Mahatma Gandhi's views on communal harmony. He said Indian nationalist movement was committed to secularism.
Deputy Vice Chancellor, the youth should have a sense of history and know that the environment that encourages their aspirations was built on the sacrifice and toil of others before them.
In other news now, the Kaveri water sharing issue is back in the Supreme Court for hearing today after warring states Karnataka and Tamil Nadu as well as the centre failed to arrive at a consensus during a meeting on Thursday. The Water Resources Minister met with Karnataka Chief Minister and PWD Minister from Tamil Nadu, but the meeting remained inconclusive. Here are the details.
Centre's efforts to broker a solution to the Kaveri water dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu have failed. A 3-hour-long meeting chaired by Water Resources Minister Uma Bharti in New Delhi on Thursday, following the Supreme Court's order, remained inconclusive. Tamil Nadu refused to accept Karnataka's proposal that an expert committee be sent to the river basin to assess water availability. Expressing disappointment over the issue, Uma Bharti urged the people of the two states to maintain peace and cordial atmosphere and said the Supreme Court would take a final decision on the matter.
Whatever Honorable Supreme Court has ordered our ministry through Attorney General, the advice came. We are just bound to do that. We called the meeting. It was an opportunity for both the states to find the solution. Even they tried their best. But ultimately, the solution could not be achieved. And now things are again in the front of Honorable Supreme Court. And we will send our notes, whatever we have noted. Every word will be sent to the Honorable Court through AG.
Karnataka Chief Minister K. Siddaramaiah once again expressed his state's inability to spare any water for Tamil Nadu, as it will be detrimental to drinking water requirements of its people. Karnataka has declared 22 districts drought affected, including the Kaveri basin area.
20ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ನವರು 7 ದಿನಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಪ್ರತಿದಿನ 6,000 ಕ್ಯೂಸೆಕ್ಸ್ ನೀರು ಬಿಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಆದೇಶ ಮಾಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ
However, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha criticized Karnataka for deliberately defying the Supreme Court order once again, calling it utter contempt. In a statement, Jayalalitha said, and I quote her, "In utter disregard and in complete contempt of the orders of the Supreme Court, Karnataka failed to release the stipulated quantity of water to Tamil Nadu. This deliberate defiance goes against the spirit of the Constitution itself and amounts to contempt of the apex court." Karnataka has not followed the orders of the Supreme Court and has, on the other hand, permitted unruly elements to create law and order issues, quote unquote. Thursday's meeting was attended by Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah and Tamil Nadu PWD Minister E.K. Palaniswamy. The Karnataka government delayed the release of Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu for the second time this week, defying the Supreme Court's order to release 6,000 cusecs of water. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you look at the cellular level, there is always a DNA change that precipitates cancer. In the sense of the DNA, cancer is a completely genetic disease. In India, oral cancer is the maximally prevalent form of cancer among males in India. Among females, it's cervical cancer, but breast cancer is taking over.
Watch Eureka with Dr. Partha P. Majumdar, Director, National Institute of Biomedical Genomics, only on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, the government has cut interest rate on small savings schemes by 0.1% for the October-December quarter, leading to lower returns on Public Provident Fund and the Kisan Vikas Patra. Interest rate on Kisan Vikas Patra has been brought down to 7.7% from 7.8%. Public Provident Fund will fetch an interest rate of 8% in the third quarter of the current fiscal, as against 8.1% in the previous 3 months period. The rate of interest for the third quarter for a 5-year National Savings Certificate has been reduced to 8%. However, the interest rate on savings deposit has been kept unchanged at 4%. More economic news now. After resolving issues of threshold and dual control of central and state tax officials or assessors last week, the GST Council would meet today to discuss compensation to states and approve rules for registration, refunds and exemptions under the proposed indirect tax regime. To be chaired by Union Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, the Council will also deliberate on a formula for payment of compensation to states for revenue loss in the aftermath of the implementation of the GST. In the previous meeting of the Council, 4 alternatives came up for discussion for compensating states for loss of revenue after implementation of the GST. According to officials, while 2015-2016 will be the base year for calculating revenue compensation to states for any loss of receipts arising from rollout of GST, the final methodology will be worked out in the next meetings. Meanwhile, the central government plans to roll out GST from April 1, 2017, and has lined up meetings of the GST Council to build consensus among the states. While shifting focus to international news now, a woman has been killed and 108 other people injured, some of them critically, after a commuter train crashed into a railway station in the US state of New Jersey. The train overran its stopping point, slammed into a bumper block, went airborne and went through ticket barriers and into the reception area of Hoboken station. There was extensive damage to the train carriages and station, with part of the building roof caving in. A huge emergency services operation swung into action following the crash. The train's driver is in a serious condition and being treated at a local hospital, but was cooperating with investigators. The crash comes 5 years after more than 30 people were injured when a train overran its stop sign at the same station. Now, the National Transportation Safety Board is looking into the cause of the crash. Meanwhile, the White House says that while there was no evidence of any terrorism linked to the accident, it has not ruled that out.
The NTSB is launching a GO team to Hoboken, New Jersey to investigate the crash of a New Jersey transit train that occurred at approximately 9 a.m. this morning. Before I go any further, I'd like to express on behalf of the entire NTSB our condolences and sympathies to everyone who is affected by the accident.
I'm not aware of any evidence that has been uncovered that would draw that kind of linkage, but this is something that the National Transportation Safety Board is continuing to look at. So I think it's too soon to rule that out, but at this point I'm not aware of any evidence that would raise those kinds of concerns at this point.
Well, the US-Russia talks over Syria are in real danger of breakdown. This as Russia vowed to continue its bombing of rebel-held eastern Aleppo in Syria, defying US demands to stop. Moscow said on Thursday that it would continue its support of the Syrian armed forces, complaining the US has not done enough to separate the more moderate rebel groups which it backs from terrorist groups. Earlier, US Secretary of State John Kerry warned it would end talks on military cooperation unless Moscow stopped the bombing. The US accuses Russia of taking part in strikes on civilian targets and possibly committing war crimes. Kerry says US was on the verge of suspending talks. Aleppo has come under heavy aerial bombardment since the partial truce deal disintegrated a week ago. UN has warned that Aleppo is facing an unprecedented humanitarian crisis.
No, I think we're on the verge of suspending the discussion because it's irrational in the context of the kind of bombing taking place to be sitting there trying to take things seriously.
Группы поддержки Сирии и, конечно, в документах Совета Безопасности ООН и в заключенных между Москвой и Вашингтоном.
The people of Syria, and most immediately the people of East Aleppo, are being subjected to deprivation, disease and death in increasing numbers and with increasing ferocity.
Staying on with international news now, Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry has said that it is a matter of great concern that 9/11 relatives in the US may be able to sue the kingdom for damages. The statement came after the US Congress voted on Wednesday for a law allowing families of nearly 3,000 people killed in the attacks to sue. In doing so, they overrode a veto by President Barack Obama. Saudi Arabia had lobbied furiously against the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism legislation. It has now called on Congress to reverse the decision. 15 of the 19 hijackers that day were Saudi nationals, but the kingdom has denied any role in the attacks. Meanwhile, leaders of the Republican Party in the Congress have said that they want to reconsider the law.
Within minutes of casting their vote to put that bill into law, you had members of the United States Senate, some 28 of them, write a letter expressing deep concern about the potential impact of the bill they just passed.
If it has a legal angle, so if it does lead to lawsuits actually happening, definitely Saudi Arabia and the relations with the US will be impacted. There is no doubt. However, there will be a period of wait and see.
Well, US Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton on Thursday accused her opponent, Republican Donald Trump, of breaking the laws by violating the US trade embargo, with Cuba slamming her rival as dishonest and willing to put his interests before the country. According to reports, Trump's company secretly conducted business in Cuba, violating the US trade embargo against the country. The company allegedly spent at least $68,000 in Cuba in 1998. Trump's spokesman Kellyanne Conway said that the money was not paid and that he was against deals with Cuba. Meanwhile, Trump denied all allegations against him and said that he had rejected offers to invest in Cuba.
We have laws in our country, and the efforts that Trump was making to get into the Cuban market, putting his business interests ahead of the laws of the United States and the requirements that businesses were operating under because of the sanctions, shows that he puts his personal and business interests ahead of the laws and the values and the policies of the United States of America.
Well, here's a roundup of the other international news in World Wrap. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Thursday said that the government was preparing to extend the state of emergency for another 3 months. He said the emergency laws were required to combat threats against the government following a failed coup attempt in July. The government has used the emergency laws to issue decrees to close down institutions and fire more than 50,000 civil servants and suspend tens of thousands more. Hillary Clinton campaigned Thursday in Iowa as early voting began in the pivotal swing state. President Barack Obama won Iowa in 2008 and 2012, but Clinton is trailing Donald Trump in the state, lagging 5 percentage points behind. Trump had slumped in Iowa a day earlier, appealing to white blue-collar workers who have helped push him into the lead in the state. A close aide of Bangladesh cafe attack mastermind Tamim Ahmed Chowdhury was arrested by Bangladesh's counter-terrorism unit on Thursday. Salauddin Kamran is a member of the Neo-Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh. The July 1st attack on Holy Artisan Bakery in Dhaka left 22 people dead. IS had claimed responsibility for the attack, but police believed that the new JMB, which is close to the Islamic State, was involved in organizing the attack. And finally, some sports news now. India will play their 250th test at home against New Zealand at the Eden Gardens in Kolkata from today. In the middle of a 12-match unbeaten streak at home, the Indian cricket team will be aiming to reclaim the #1 spot in the ICC Test rankings with a victory at the Eden Gardens. With 10 wins and 2 draws in their last 12 matches, India has been unstoppable on home turf in a journey that began with the 1-2 series loss against England in December 2012. India won the first test against New Zealand in Kanpur and is leading the 4-match series 1-0. Well, that's it on this edition of the Breakfast News. Have a good day.